Maple Fundamentals is an all-in-one tutorial designed to help you become familiar with the Maple environment and to teach you the fundamental concepts and tools that you need to become productive quickly. We recommend that you go through each step in Maple on your own as we go along. Please note that I'm going to do this video using document mode, so that's what we recommend you to use as you work through this tutorial. Just about everything I say also applies to Worksheet Mode, and I'll point out any important differences as we go. So to get started, click on New Document. Now I'm just going to switch over to this other document here that we've created simply because the headings will make it easier to follow along. So to begin using Maple, you can simply just type in some mathematics and press Enter to see the result returned. If you wanted to have the results returned on the same line, you would press Alt-Enter for that to happen. So in this example, if I type in a bit of math and I press Alt and Enter, the math will be returned on the same line. Now Maple's context panel is one of the most important tools in Maple, and it can be used to perform a wide variety of operations, and the options are going to change depending on what expression or object your cursor is on. So the context panel is on the right side of the Maple workspace here, and notice what happens as I start to type in a bit of an example here. So we'll start to type in x plus 5 minus 2. And notice how that context panel has just now changed to provide you with all the relevant options for the kind of math that we're now working with. Now say if we were to take this, let's just use the context panel to perform an integration here. We'll press Integrate with respect to x. And just like that, we now see an integration. If we want to take this a little bit further, we might take this here and let's click on Plot, and we'll just get a 2D plot of what we're looking at. So just by a few clicks of a mouse, we're able to work with mathematics and visualize them and perform all the different kinds of common manipulations that we would want. Note that when you use context menus in Worksheet Mode, that Maple uses what's called equation labels as a way to reference your previous math. So note here that this number 2 is referencing the mathematics on the previous line. Now, math in a Maple document is live, and that means that you can go back, make changes, and re-execute the problem, and you'll get a new result. So in our initial example of 1 plus 2, if we were to go back and just change that 1 to a 3 and press Enter, the results are going to be updated. If we were to take this example from our previous line here, and let's move this down here, let's change this x here to a 10x. And then if we were to go ahead, select all of it and execute by pressing the execute button, you can see the mathematics change in real time as well. If you wanted to re-execute everything on the document, you would press the execute all button. Now at the top of that context panel is what we call smart pop-ups, which give you previews of the result of an operation before you'll go to apply it. So let's put in a bit of math here, say sine of 2x. And notice what happens to the context menu and the smart pop-ups above. Maybe we'll try to apply a trig identity to that. So using the full angle reduction identity, we've now been able to transform that into a different form just by using these smart pop-ups. Well, we continue on. Let's talk a bit about fractions. And fractions are very simple to enter. You just use the / key. So there's a few different ways that you can enter fractions. Very simply, if I was to type A / B, then I'll see that fraction right there. But if I have larger fractions, I can enclose everything in the numerator in brackets. So let's say A plus 2 and then / B. But also, if I'm not using brackets, let's say I have that A plus 2 again, I can just select what I want as the numerator, press / and then there you have it. I can just put my B in. So there's a few different ways you can do it, and you'll come to find the way that works best for you. So Maple calculates exact answers, but it can return symbolic if you need. So let's just evaluate pi plus 1/2 plus 1/3. Now to get a pi, we can just click on this common symbols area on the palettes on the left. There are many ways to enter different symbols, but just for the simplicity, you can just point and click and choose pi there. From there, I'll then click plus, and I'll click 1/2 plus 1 over 3. I'll hold Alt-Enter to get that on the same line, and that's pi plus 5/6. Now, if you want a numeric approximation for this, these are all going to be, again, available in the context panel. So over on the right, let's approximate that at 5 digits. And you'll see that Maple gives you that approximation. As another example, if you wanted to format your numbers in a different way, let's type in, say, 0.33x plus 1/3 of x. And right now, if we hold Alt and hit Enter, because we have some decimals already, Maple knows to give us a decimal formatted result. But if we wanted that, say, in the scientific number format, it's also in the context panel. So here under number format at the bottom, we would just click scientific, and then we're given the answer that we're looking for. Maple has over 1,000 expressions and symbols within all its collection of palettes that you can see on the left here. And there's all different kinds of ways that you can use these. So we'll just get a few examples going. A simple one would be just an integral. So if you were to click on, say, this definite integral symbol, then you can go ahead and fill this out. So if we wanted a definite integral from 0 to 1, we type in 0, press Tab to move through the fields, press 1. The function that we'd look to be would say be x squared. So we type in x, and then the hat symbol. It's that small caret symbol above the number 6 key. And then when we're finished, we press the right arrow to get out of that. And then we'll say minus 3 times x. And we'll tab over right here just to say we'll be integrating with respect to x. Now we can just press Enter. And the result we'll see is negative 7/6. You've noticed already we've entered some symbols in Maple, such as pi, and there's a few different ways that you can enter symbols. So one way to do it, like you saw before, was to just drag them in from the common symbols section. But faster ways can often be accomplished just by using the keyboard. So you can type the first few letters of what you're looking for and then press Escape, and you'll see what expressions are available to you. So as an example, we'll do the square root by entering SQRT, and I press Escape, and now Maple's showing me what I can use. So I'll click on this first one here. So now I have a square root symbol. And then let's say I want to put in the exponential constant e. So if I just type e, note this is not the exponential symbol yet. So I'll press Escape, and now we see the very first one is the exponential e. And notice how the letter e is going to change when I click this. It now moves to a non-italicized e. And let's do e to the power of x. So again, the little hat symbol, and we'll move an arrow key to get out. And you can see we're still underneath the square root symbol, so we'll press right arrow once more. And we'll just add, say, pi squared. So we'll type pi, press Escape, and now we have the pi symbol. And similarly, the caret symbol squared. So if we press Enter, now we have what we're looking for, and we didn't have to go through the palettes if we didn't want to. Just a note, it's really important to make sure that when you're using the exponential constant, that you are using symbol completion to get it. You can type in E, you could type in EXP, but it's very important that you recognize that simply just typing in E will just be a variable that Maple will understand to be not related to any particular constant. So make sure that you get that one sorted out. Similarly, if you want to enter templates, like before we had brought in the definite integral, but if we just typed in int, kind of alluding to integral, and press Escape, you can see here that we can just click on our definite integral, and then again, away we go, and we can just do something very simple. So there's a lot that you can find just by pressing the Escape key with symbol completion. A note too, as you get more familiar with entering mathematics, is that Maple is case sensitive. So this means that, well, if you type in something like x plus x, Maple will know to simplify that to 2x. But if you were to have a lowercase y and a capital Y, if we press Alt-Enter now, there's no simplification here. And that's because Maple will treat the different cases of letters as different variables. So it's just important to make sure that you're working with the same case of letter, just so that your calculations make sense as you work through them. There's also a couple tricks related to multiplication. There's a few different ways that you can tell Maple to multiply variables and numbers together. Up until now, we've just been using numbers without any other syntax. Just say 3x plus 4x, and then Alt-Enter, and that becomes 7x. And Maple just knows that if you're going to put a number beside a variable like x, that what you want to do is multiply that. However, you can also use the asterisk. So if I was to type in 3 and then Shift 8 to get the asterisk x plus, let's just say 5x, and I won't put the asterisk there, Maple knows that these are the same. So again, we'll get the simplification. But where you need to be careful is if you're having variables that are multiplied by each other, then you need to understand whether or not you're telling Maple that, say, the variable xy is supposed to be x times y, or to be just simply a new variable. So let's just say we put in x space y, where space is another way to imply multiplication, and then we plus that to xy. I didn't put in any asterisks or space. If I look at the result there, you see that there's nothing simplified because Maple treats xy as a separate variable. And you can see that if we were to, say, use the context panel here and click on differentiate, Maple's showing us that you can differentiate with respect to 3 separate variables because it really is treating xy here as a new variable. So just make sure that you use your multiplication symbols properly, because Maple has a certain kind of syntax that it works with. So moving on to mathematical notation, there's a variety of different notations Maple understands, which are all the different familiar notations that you would be using with a pen and paper. So for example, when it comes to differentials, we know that, say, y prime means the derivative of y, the first derivative of y. So if we type in y, and then say we put in an apostrophe, let's put in 2 for y double prime. So what we'll do there is just press apostrophe once and twice. And then similarly, we'll add a y single prime, and then we'll just add y without any prime. Now if we go to look at the solution of that, we can see that Maple understands this, this familiar notation. What we can do from here is use the solve DE, and over here Maple knows to solve this with y of x. Note that even from this initial stage, before we had even pressed enter here, Maple understands this as a differential equation. So that's a notation you'll want to become familiar with. Another thing you'll want to learn about is label references. So when you're performing mathematics, Maple creates references to the math that you've already done so that you can recall them later. So let's just say if I had, from this example up here, let's just take the square root of exponential example from before, and I'll just copy and paste it down here. Say, great. So I've got this math here, and notice that Maple creates a reference on the right saying that this is the reference to the math. If I was to type Control L, I can just say, okay, use the math from this particular area of my worksheet and multiply it by x squared. And if I do that, you'll see the new mathematics, and it has its own label equation or the label reference. So this is very useful when you want to reference to certain parts of your worksheet that are much further up. And then if you make any changes at the beginning of your worksheet, this will all start to filter down through so your math still stays consistent. In order to assign a value to a variable name, you'll use the assignment statement, which is denoted by a colon and followed by the equal sign. So as an example, let's assign the variable cost, using our colon equal sign, to a value of 10. So you see here now cost is equal to 10. And if we wanted to perform some mathematics with that, we would then type in something like 2 times cost. And you can see now that Maple uses the value of cost as 10. Now just note that Maple performs calculations only when you ask it to. So that means that if you change the value of a variable, you'll need to re-execute the statements that depend on that variable. So for example, if we had changed, say, cost up here to 500, and then we went down here and we re-executed 2 times cost, it's still going to equal 20. Just take note and be careful that when you do change assignments to variables, you need to re-execute everything. And a useful way to do that might be just clicking the Execute All button. In this case, because we're part of a larger worksheet, I'll just select both of the statements we have, and we will re-execute them both. And now we have 2 times cost equals 1,000, which is what we're expecting to see. Moving on, let's talk a bit about how we can define functions. So to define a function in Maple, we'll use arrow notation, and that's going to require typing in the hyphen and the greater than sign. So as an example, we will define a function f to take a value w and to return the square of that. So w squared. So now we've defined a function, and let's just see what happens now if we want to know what that function looks like if we were to use the number 2 here. So of course we take 2 and it's squared, and Maple returns the output of that function. So you can call it in a variety of ways. Another way that you can work with mathematics is with a new Maple companion app. And this is an app for mobile devices where you can simply take the picture of the mathematics that you have, whether it's on your computer screen somewhere or it's in your notebook, and Maple will understand the mathematics that you've created or drawn by hand. And then within the application, you can start to work with the math and perform a variety of different functions on it. And then you can also bring that math into your Maple worksheet as well using the Maple Cloud. So that's another easy way to get the mathematics that you have into Maple easily. Now Maple is more than just an environment for adding only mathematics. With all of the document features that we have, you can also add text and pictures and images. So right now you can see our cursor has a blue background, which is called Math Mode. If I press F5, it'll take me into text mode, where I can just start to write out text, such as the solution can be expressed as, and now let's say I want to put some mathematics here. So I'll press F5 and I'll get back to my math mode. I'll bring in an integral and I'll just type x cubed plus x squared plus 3, and we'll integrate that with respect to x. And now that I'm at the end of this, I can just press F5 again, and I'm back to math mode. So I'll continue describing my sentence here. So now we're able to switch back and forth, and you can see how you can describe problems easily by moving back and forth. You can also include live calculations inside your paragraphs and perform inline calculations. So as an example here, we'll start off in text mode, and we'll switch to math with F5, and we'll put in a simple polynomial, say x squared minus 2x plus 1. And we'll use Maple's context panel to factor that. Now we'll switch back to text mode with F5, and we'll finish our sentence. Now you could delete this equal sign if you wanted to, and you could actually place some words there. So if I want to describe this a bit better, we would say can be rewritten as. And now you can see the mathematics are still live, but now we've really described our problem in a clear way using text. Now all the math is still live, so let's say that we were to change the +1 here to a -15. And then if we highlighted this entire sentence and clicked on execute, you would see here that Maple also changes the result, which is no longer able to be factored quite as neatly. So just know that by default, all the mathematics in your text is live, and it can be re-executed, and if you were to press execute all, it would execute everything in your worksheet. But there might be times when you want to include some mathematics for a pure sense of notation and description, but you don't want it to be live. In that case, instead of pressing F5, which will show us that there's this nice blue background, we can press Shift F5, and you'll see that background changes to gray. And that just means that the math is not going to be live. So let's just say, as an example, we'll type in a bit more math here. The represented by, we'll add in an integral here. So we'll switch to, at this point now, we'll switch to the non-executable math with Shift F5. And now we'll put in an integral. X to the n. Okay, now that we're to the right of that, we'll switch back to text mode. Now if you look here, if I click on this math, there's that gray background. So this won't actually execute. But if you were to look up here, see this mathematics here, certainly would execute. If I was to grab all of this and try to execute, we'd see here that nothing would happen. But at the same time, if I was to execute this line here, Maple will just return the result on the next line. So be mindful of the kind of math that you're looking to use. Now, if you primarily work in worksheet mode, just note there are a few differences for adding text. If we click over and we look at a worksheet mode, you can type your math as you would, but if you wanted to switch over to a text region, you would press the T here, and that would allow you to insert your text. And you can also press, instead of the T above, you can just use the F5 command to switch back and forth between text and math. So it works similarly to document mode, but there are still some important differences. Okay, moving on down to plotting. And plotting is a huge part of Maple, and Maple has an extensive array of different ways that you can produce plots, both 2D and 3D. The fastest way to plot is going to be using the context panel, as with most things in Maple. So let's just add a simple expression here, the negative x squared plus 15. And immediately we see a plot that we can just click on a button and we'll return to this plot now. You can manipulate this plot in several ways using the plot manipulator tools, which are found on the plot toolbar. You see that the toolbar up here just changed. So I can pan a plot. If I click the pan button, I can move it around. If I click on the magnifying lens, I can select an area that I want to inspect a little further, and Maple will zoom in accordingly. If I want to, say, understand different points on a line here, what I could do is, in my plot, I could click Manipulator, Point Probe, and I want the info of the nearest point on the line. So now as I drag through, Maple will tell me what the individual points are that are nearest to where my cursor is on the line. You can also combine plots as well. So let's say if I take a simple example of sine squared x, this is the result you would see. Just type another trigonometric function here and just type in sine of x over 2. Now I can just select that and hold down the control key and drag it onto the plot above, and Maple will just automatically combine them. Going further, you can also annotate plots, so you can add additional information. So in the plot above, I'll just copy it and bring it down for our purposes. In this plot above here, we can add labels, we can add lines. So if I click on this, I'll change in the plotting toolbar our selection to drawing. And now when I'm in the drawing section, I have the ability to click on a variety of options. So let's click on the text tool and just label our plot. I'll make sure that I'm in math mode when I do this. So I press F5 and we'll just label this particular line so that we're aware of what we're looking at. And then similarly, I'll label the second one as well. Sine of x over 2. So there's just some different ways that you can annotate your plot and you can work with them. Now when it comes to 3D plots, you also have a huge variety of options. If we enter a simple expression to get started, say sine of x times y, again, you can see the context panel changing on the right. And let's just click on 3D plot to see what we're presented with. And just like that, we have a 3D plot. You can click and you can drag it around to rotate and manipulate the plot itself. Similarly, you're able to zoom, you're able to pan this around. You've got a variety of options for interacting with it. I'll just copy it and let's explore just a few more options with this plot as well. Let's say over on the right here, I just want to adjust the transparency. Let's say I want to make it look a bit more transparent so that I can see features throughout my three-dimensional space. It's that easy just to change different options. If you really are looking for more options on how to build a plot, we have something called the Plot Builder. It allows you to create and customize plots in Maple. So let's, as an example, just put in another simple expression, say x squared plus y squared. And from there, if you look over on the right, we have this option called Plot Builder. And when you click on Plot Builder, the context panel on the right is going to change. And let's say that we're looking for a 2D contour plot. So if I click that, you can already see how the plot is changing. Let's say instead of a 2D contour plot, we actually wanted it to be a 3D plot. So we'll just change it now, and Maple will provide us with the 3D plot instead. And let's kind of change the shading here. So instead of XYZ, we'll change it to Z hue. And instead of a surface wireframe style, let's go with surface. So now you can see how the way the plot looks is different. If you wanted to add a title to it, at the top here we can see axes and text. So we'll click that and we can give it a quick title. So lots of simple ways that you can work with plots using the Plot Builder on the right. If you want to use plotting with commands, there's also a variety of different commands that Maple uses, especially the common ones being plot and plot 3D for 3D plots. So let's just say we wanted to use that command plot and we wanted to plot the sine of x. We want to plot that with respect to x. So that's how you'll get a quick plot just using a command simply. And note that you can still use the context panel to change options of your plot once you've got it produced. Plot commands can take a whole bunch of different kinds of inputs. They're really powerful commands. If we were to look at the plot that we built in this previous example with the Plot Builder, let's just go back to basic options and we want to show command. So Maple will give us the command that we would require to make that plot. So if I copy that and I bring that down into our plotting command section, if I was to paste that and press enter, this is all the information required for Maple to generate that exact same plot. So there's a lot of options contained in how you can use these commands, and there's a lot more information in the plotting guide in Maple, and we'll cover a bit of that in just a bit. In addition to Plot Builder, Maple includes a lot of other interactive tools for performing different kinds of tasks. One of these is the Exploration Assistant, and that allows you to instantly create mini applications that you can explore parameters with, even if the expression involves Maple commands. So let's look at an example of that. We'll type in plot 3D of cosine of a times x plus b times sine of y. And now don't press enter once you've got this written in. Instead, over to the right, we're going to click Explore, and we're going to explore how this function would actually, how it would vary given a few different parameters. Once you've clicked on Explore, there's a variety of options here you can see. What we're going to do is we're going to click on X and Y to skip these, but we're going to ask Maple to give us some sliders that will allow us to explore how A and B would be varied from 0 to 10 and what the plot would look like at that point. So let's click on Explore. Now A and B are both 0, but as we start to change them a little bit, you can see that the function is starting to take on quite a different shape. So this is sort of a useful way to explore how mathematics behave as they're sort of poked and prodded. There's also something in Maple called Tutors. And tutors are great applications for helping you learn particular concepts and step you through them. For example, if we click Tools, Tutors, let's go into Calculus Single Variable, and then Integration Methods. So So now we're going to see a tutor that Maple has that allows you to understand the different methods of integration. You can get a hint here if you're trying to figure out where you might go next. And there's all the different rules involved about how you might actually perform this. Or you can click Next Step to see where Maple is going to take this. And all the different steps are laid out, eventually taking you to your final answer. When you click Close, you return with all of those steps and how Maple got there. Another area of Maple is math apps, and those provide, again, interactive explorations of different mathematical and scientific concepts, so all areas of engineering. Let's take a look at one by going into Tools and Math Apps. But let's just click on Algebra and Geometry, and we'll go down to, if you scroll down a little bit here, we'll go down to Conic Sections. So now we're opened up with an application that allows you to understand how the intersection of a cone and a plane would function. I can scroll down here and I can start to manipulate this, and I can visualize the mathematics as they move around. So let's take a look at another example. Go back into our math apps, and we'll look in the calculus area, and we'll go into the integral section, which is a bit further down. We'll choose the volumes by disks. If we click on that, just try adding your own function or choosing some of the pre-made ones. And if we click on one here, we can see right here what this looks like. And we can even animate to see how this was created, what the volume by disks method would actually look like. Note that you can view a lot of these math apps online too in Maple Cloud. It's maple.cloud. And you can view them using only a web browser, so it's a great way to show them to other people. For more task-specific help, you can choose Tools and Tasks. In here, you can browse through a large collection of task templates for solving problems such as calculus, curve fitting, geometry, linear algebra, statistics, and a whole lot more. Let's talk a bit about entering commands, which Maple has over 5,000 of them, and you can call them directly. A lot of these commands are organized into packages, and when calling these commands, you'll have to tell Maple where to find them, which is to say which package they're in. So as an example, let's just type in factor, which Maple recognizes as a basic command. We'll try to factor this right here. If I press enter, Maple knows to factor this. As an example, we'll insert a matrix using the matrix palette down below. We'll insert a 2x2, but first what we'll want to do is we'll want to assign that matrix to M. And now let's just insert a 2x2 matrix and give it some values by pressing tab to move through the placeholders. Press enter. Now we see that this is what M has been assigned to. And now what we want to do is say find the determinant of this matrix. So what we'll have to do is first type in the package that it is found in, which is the linear algebra package. So we'll type linear algebra, and then we'll use a square bracket to tell Maple what command we want to use from within that package. So that's determinant. And then we'll tell it to find the determinant of M. Just take note though, if you don't specify which package that Maple should be calling the command from, it won't recognize that command. So if we were just to type in, say, determinant of M, we're just given this. We're not actually finding the determinant. You can avoid having to type all of this in though by loading the package using the with command. So if I was to load the package, it would call all of those commands into memory so that we can work with them. So if I was to type in with linear algebra, and I press enter from that, you would see all the different commands that are now loaded into memory. If you want to suppress the output though, you can just add a colon there. Now Maple has already loaded the package, but it's cleaned up your worksheet a bit since maybe you may not want to see all the commands there. So now that we've loaded the linear algebra package, let's just try running that same command again. So we'll just click up here to determinant and press enter, and now it functions just as we'd expect. Another thing that you can do is use symbol completion, which is really useful for different kinds of commands since the names can get long. So if we wanted to talk about the Gaussian elimination of this determinant, I'll make sure that I'm in math mode and I'll type in GAU, and then I'll press escape. You can see below Gaussian elimination is right there. And again, we've already loaded the linear algebra package. So this is everything we need to perform the function, perform the command. There's a lot of different packages that can be loaded. If you click on Tools, Load Package, there's just a selection of them here, but there's even more packages if you were to click List All Packages. So if there's still ways that you're looking to get some help with Maple, there's a bunch of resources that you can go to get help with them. One would be just the help system. So if we click Help and Maple Help, this is the help system where you can browse the entire contents of what we have in our help system. If you know the name of the command that you're interested in, then maybe you don't need the help system. In that sense, you could go back to your worksheet, you could type question mark, and then you could say, I'm curious about the isPrime command. Maple will bring up the help for that. So there's a huge amount of information in Maple's help system. And just note that you can place your cursor on a Maple command in your worksheet and press F2 to bring up that help page. So if I'm here, I press F2 and the help page will return. Lastly, an important place to get help too is the Maple portal. So if I type question mark Maple portal, what Maple will bring up is the Maple portal, which is a collection of useful resources for learning about Maple. It's going to include things that if you're new to Maple you should learn about, a section for how do I perform various tasks, training videos, different kinds of manuals, examples and applications, and additional resources for students and educators. So there's a lot of resources here. That about wraps up the fundamentals for Maple. By this point, you should have a pretty firm grasp on how to get started. As always, make sure to use the help system and the Maple portal if you're looking to explore your understanding of Maple.